going to introduce you to ICON, and we will introduce you to our view of what is possible today with the modern payment systems. So I'll start, saving my voice, by introducing you to ICON.
We've spent a quarter of a century on the front line of finance innovation, building pioneering payment processes. Here's where our decades of international expertise and hand-picked open source technologies unite to inject pace and peace of mind into real-time payments, delivering IPF, an agile, scalable solution. Relighten the load through seamless integration. That's a breath of fresh air, helping us rise above other high-cost, heavyweight payment hubs. Using cutting-edge open-source technologies, IPF operates with low latency and 24/7 availability with no disruption, evolving to meet your changing needs with new features and enhanced capabilities deployed with agility to put you in control and give you the edge. In an ever-evolving payments landscape, to optimize systems, customize components, and choose from interfaces that connect. You'll enjoy expert support from global pioneers processing payments in a flash, up to 2,000 TPS, with no impact on the quality of service. So, has the penny dropped yet? IPF's a resilient, world-beating payment solution that creates brilliant, world-class customer experiences.
And so the question is, what is the next generation payment hub? And I'd like to start by saying that it's really important to have a point of view about what really things mean. Now, this might look to you like a view of Earth from outer space. What you might not realize is it could equally be the view of the frog from the bottom of the well. So it's really important to really question the perspective when you look at things. So if we go back to 2015, we've all seen these kinds of pictures. This is a somewhat stylized view of what an IT architecture within a typical bank is, and it's busy enough to give you a terrible, terrible headache. And so at around the same time, so really around 2010, but 2015 is when we started publishing, we as an industry came up with a view of what payment hubs are. And we had multiple models. We had an end-to-end payment hub, we had an orchestration hub that pulled together other hubs. We had vertical payment hubs, which were a single rail. So there was one for wire, one for ACH, one for real-time now, clearing hubs, etc. And when we polled all of you in 2015 and asked you, what do you think is going to happen in 3 years? This is the graphic from our friends in CEB Tower. 63% of you said that in 3 years you would have a payment hub that would embrace all the rails. Can I have, by the show of hands, how many people here have a payment hub that covers multiple rails? Okay, I'm going to count the number of smirks and giggles and head shakes. This is the quote from my friends at 80 Group, that adoption today did not quite meet expectations for the reasons that you would think. It's expensive, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of your resources. And yet, more than ever, there is a feeling that banks need payment hubs. The idea itself is very sound. You really want to have a single source of truth, single view of data, and single harmonized processing. The only question in my mind is, can it come from a single vendor? Today, the reality is that you run effectively multi-vendor hubs. In US, if you're a typical FI, you have your wire system from ACI, you have ACH from Fiserv, and then on and on and on. However, just because today we live in a multi-vendor environment, the question remains, does it make sense to move forward to a single vendor payment hub? My experience and my history is spending 15 years on the vendor side, building and thinking about payment hubs, is when you pull back the covers of a single vendor hub, you can still see, okay, this is the wire rail, this is the ACH rail, this is the piece of a database optimized for this is a piece of a database optimized for that. So I deliberately took this graphic, which is a stylized graphic of a particular hub design, to show you that underneath we're still looking at logical connections. They're not really harmonized. When you look at the backdrop of the fact that the leading hubs have now been in existence for about 10 years, you really have to start thinking about the cost of the technical debt that had been incurred over those 10 years. As we all know, as technologists, if you look at the orange bar and the orange graph, you see the cost of change. When the system is young, the cost of change is very small. As the system gets older, the cost of change goes up very rapidly. The same thing with the responsiveness to change, the green axis on the far right. When the system is young, the system is very responsive to change. When the system is old, the system becomes much more resistant to change. And so the question is, if you're running technology that's 10 years old, even though it looks like a harmonized hub, the reality of software engineering tells us it's going to cost a lot to change, and it's going to be less responsive to change than some of the younger systems. And so my view, and this is the view shared by friends in Accenture, is that the way forward is fewer heart transplants, more bypasses. And what they mean by that is traditional banking systems are not really suited for digital businesses, digital economy. And so the way to deal with that is leave the traditional ones doing what they do, ring fence them, and then put in systems alongside that are built for digital economy, but then integrate them so you don't lose anything by having the two of them working together. And so to go back to that point, if I look at what many banks have today, is systems built around business that's built around schedules, business days, business that makes money by looking at very complicated fees and charges, businesses that are built around charging for exceptions. And when you look at what the digital economy demands, it demands real-time, 100% STP, and you don't make money on exceptions and workarounds. You make money on high volume, very simple, very reliable processing. It really is a shift from moving earth to moving water. You have choices. You can take the payment hub that has been built for very complicated, slow-moving, timer-driven, frequently batch processing and try to extend it to real time. Or you can take a solution that is built for digital economy and then run it alongside the solution that's built for the legacy economy. What that would look like is some kind of a method of payment selection, orchestration layer, order management sitting between the customer channels and the clearing. And that layer will make a decision whether you go up the slow rails and deal with legacy clearings, or you go down the real-time rails and work with the real-time clearing. Now, once you make a decision that, to use the English term, horses for courses, you pick the best player for the best solution, you can have some choices around what is available now in the market. ICON specifically, we made the bet around open source technology because we know that open source now is the most stable technology. You know, you have experience with Facebook, you have experience with Google and Amazon. This is a technology proven at that sort of a scale. This is a technology that's most transparent, so it has the lowest incidence of cybercrime. And also, there are interesting things that are possible. So we, for example, at ICON have taken an open source tool called Modelio, which generates text representation of flows and created our own IP to turn the output of that open source tool into executable flows. What does that do? First of all, it removes that time where you spend time doing requirements analysis and then try and hope that you did it right, transfer that into system configuration and setup. Here, it's done at the press of a button, you don't lose anything. Second thing it does, it forces us to keep maintaining the architecture. Because the flows are generated dynamically, our business logic must remain modular so that it gets plugged in as the flows are regenerated. And what that does, it preserves the integrity of the architecture. And also, we're using tools like Cucumber and Gherkin to develop our systems, not just in a model-driven environment, but also in test-first environment, where we write the test scripts first and then write the code that is validated by the script that is written first, and then allows us to do continuous integration and be ready for DevOps and cloud. And on top of it, we then deliver the system that's certified to the clearing and settlement mechanism in the country. We've already done several in Europe and in UK, and we are on plan with the clearinghouse as well. Now, what does that do? If you take a modern system, and one of our banks had been nice enough to share their internal analysis, that if I take a payment hub as a benchmark of 100% of cost, we find that across the various components of total cost of ownership, the license, the hardware, the integration and testing, the modern engines come in at around 30, 40, or 50% of the cost of the legacy ones. If we look at the internal cost of the bank, in other words, after you've paid the vendor and you've paid for integration, bank had to provide their own system, their own people, their own experts, work with the systems. We find that the amount of work that bank would have to do on implementing the traditional hub drops down to about 40% with the modern one. Now you say, well, these are just numbers and guesses. Can you give us some real examples? With the bank we're implementing in Europe now, it's a large tier 1 bank. We are actually, things are moving fast. When we put this presentation together, we were doing 2 CSMs. At this point, we're doing 3 CSMs. So we're doing STET, and we're doing EBA, and we're doing Hungary. And when in November, the central bank puts out the real-time clearing system in Europe, we will be doing the 4th CSM as well. The 3 countries in the first wave are now up to 4 countries in the first wave. However, it is still true that from the time we delivered the system to the bank, installed it and turned it on, and certified it with the scheme, it took 4 weeks. Curious if anybody has seen a system installed and certified in 4 weeks, or just system installed in 4 weeks. And we're on plan to deliver the system ready for go live in 5 months from the time we've started. So that's a very strong proof point from my standpoint, and I'm going to stop at this point